How is Raiders GM John Spytek feeling about the trade for Geno Smith? And how about the upcoming draft season? You'll hear that plus a lot more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 1st, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you if you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page. You know we appreciate both. The show continues to grow each and every day and get your support. We definitely need your support. We love your support. Thanks for tuning in each and every day. And also thanks to the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. It takes a lot of pride in his work, and we definitely appreciate that here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So shout out to Ari. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. That's your calls, texts, all your feedback. We'll try to get in as much as possible coming up in segment number 3. And I'll warn you now, there's a ton of feedback. And as we're, on April 1st right now, we're looking into the belly of the beast when it comes to the draft, right? April 24th is the first round. You can imagine there's going to be a ton of feedback, a ton of anticipation when it comes to the upcoming draft. So all your feedback as much as possible, segment number 3. Segment number 2, sticking with the NFL draft and the theme, Adam Rank from NFL Network, NFL.com, does a fantastic job covering the league from a national point of view. Last year had a piece that he put out on NFL.com, his mock draft with a twist. I'll tell you why that's significant. You'll hear what his thoughts are this year as he's putting that same piece together, and what he's thinking about is in play for the Raiders at number 6 that not too many people are talking about. You'll hear that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, just trying to get you caught up on all things you need to know, including hearing a little something from GM John Spytek. We'll get into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And before we get into the news and notes of the day, it is April 1st. I'm not going to play a joke on you. I'm not going to try to play a prank on you, but I will shout out the Hood holiday. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. Man, it's already April, right? That went by so fast. And I'll say this as a side note. I want to say one of the last times I was able to do that was all the way back to last year when it was a training camp in Costa Mesa. And actually one of the members of Bone Thugs actually reached out to me by way of LinkedIn and was like, hey, thanks for the shout out. That was really cool. And they said that they were coming to training camp in Costa Mesa. I never got to see them, but I was trying to get them on the show. So there you go. Bone Thugs and Harmony. They check out the show as well. So again, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. Classic right there. You gotta love that. So off top, on Monday, the Raiders made it official with Devin White, something we had talked about over the course of the weekend. We found out about that on Friday. He joins the Raiders after spending the 2024 season with the Eagles and the Texans. He played in 7 games with 1 start, all in Houston, totaling 19 tackles. Again, nothing that's a earth-shattering signing of Devin White. It's not the Devin White that was coming out of LSU in 2019 when I thought that he should be the number 4 overall pick as opposed to the number 5. But he's a guy that can come in and compete. And, he could be a placeholder. The Raiders might go into the draft, get a couple linebackers, and then it's all said and done, and they might not need him. But for this part, they're at least kind of filling that void. So everything became official on Monday when it comes to linebacker Devin White. Now, the Raiders are at the owners' meetings. It's in Florida. It was Monday and Tuesday. It's going to get wrapped up probably early today, as a matter of fact. So depending on what time you're listening to this show, it might already be wrapped up. The owners are going to vote on a few things, including the tush push that the Eagles have perfected and nobody else can. It sounds like there's some momentum to banning that. I hope they don't. I think teams just need to figure out how to stop it, right? And if they can't stop it, then figure out how to do it just as well. And they haven't done it, right? I mean, the Eagles have mastered it. Jalen Hurts is a dude that can pull it off really well just because of his strength. The fact that the guy squats 600 pounds, that obviously helps. They have the best offensive line in football, so that obviously helps. And, again, they found one play and decided that they were going to make it their play. And now teams like Green Bay and others have said that they want to get that play banned. So we'll see. The owners will vote on it today, and we'll find out if it is banned or not, or if they kind of table it and say, we need to get some more information before we go through with it. But it sounds like from talking to some people that were at the owners' meetings, I did this on Monday on my radio show, sounds like that there's not a whole lot of circumstances that are on the table that is going to make these meetings drag a long time. So it'll probably get wrapped up pretty early today. Again, that's going on in Florida. But as far as the Raiders go, John Spytek, the GM, spoke. Pete Carroll, the head coach, spoke. Even Mark Davis talked, but that was off the record with MD. But, man, Pete Carroll talked for like 30 minutes. John Spytek talked for 30 minutes. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to bring all that to the table. That would be like 4 editions of the show, and we're not going to do that. I can do that like every day of the week if I really wanted to. But, it's really noisy. It's a breakfast-type setting. You hear plates and everything going on in the background. Plus, there's all these other all these other head coaches that are speaking with the media as well. So it gets a little loud at times. But there was a couple sound bites from GM John Spytek that I wanted you to check out real quick. And the first one, Vinny Bonsignore, and he's the one who sent me this sound, was asking GM John Spytek about Geno Smith, and then had a follow-up about his contract extension.
John, we haven't talked to you since the Geno Smith trade. Kind of how quickly did that sort of come about, and what does he bring to the table?
Yeah, like most things in this league, it came fast. A lot of things happened at the combine, and then it was a week later or something like that, we had the deal done. And obviously with Pete, there's a familiarity there with the player and the organization that he's coming from, and those things always kind of help speed things up, I think, since he has such a great relationship with John Schneider, and we can all kind of tell the truth in that world. And so, like I talked about the other day, we were going to look everywhere we can for a quarterback, and when Geno became available, I've always respected Geno's ability to throw it, and then with Pete, his intimate knowledge of the person and the competitor and the preparer was huge, and so it helped us get comfortable really quick. And I would have obviously made a deal pretty fast after that.
There's a contract element to all this. Do you feel like that's on its way to happening? Is that in the works type of a thing? And also, we haven't got a chance to talk to him yet.
No,
so
I know.
We're all kind of wondering, when that might be.
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk too much about contracts and negotiations, other than I'll just say what I said to our in-house guys the other day. We're looking forward to having him for not just this year, but for the years to come. And when we get everything where it needs to be, he'll be around, and I'm confident that'll happen fairly soon.
GM John Spytek talking about Geno Smith, not only for this year, but years to come, and feels like the contract extension will get done soon. Now, and for years to come is the question I have, and I've been saying it for a while, that when the extension does happen, and I do believe it'll happen sooner rather than later, I don't think they're waiting for the NFL draft before it happens. I just want to see what the structure is, right? Not really worried about the money too much. You kind of know what that is. You know what the cost of doing business is, around $40 to $45 million a year. The guarantee money will probably be anywhere from 80 to 100 million, but the structure, when can they get out of it? When can they move on and not do a lot of financial damage to themselves and their salary cap? That's my big question when it comes to this contract extension. Obviously, we won't know that until they actually announce the extension and he gets to meet with the media. Also, John Spytek was speaking about the draft season and his thoughts on it.
This draft season really is one of my favorite times, if not my favorite time of the year, because the team building part of it and the control that you have, it's unlike any other part of, I think, team building. And I don't want to share all our secrets, but I think it's a pretty deep draft class overall, and I think you guys probably know some of the positions where it's pretty deep at. And over the next 3.5 weeks here or whatever, we're just going to try to put together a great plan to manipulate it and build the team the right way. It's not necessarily about adding talent or the best player here. It's about how do we put it all together, the puzzle, and make it make sense. Years where there's deeper classes at a certain position, it makes me think if we pass on it here, maybe we can get one here, but if we pass on this one here, we'll never have a shot at it. And so that's kind of the strategy that comes up over the next 3.5 weeks here to the draft. That's hard to believe that's 3.5 weeks away. I'm right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks from Thursday.
Yeah. Putting the right pieces.
Giving me anxiety thinking about it.
That excites me to hear him say it's his favorite time of year, team building, right? And there's no other part of the year that's like it, right? Because of the opportunity. And of course, he spent a long time in Tampa Bay as the assistant GM under Jason Light. He's a guy that would stand out there and talk to the media following, the first round, second round, whatever the case may be, kind of explaining the approach that they took during the draft. And that's a big deal, right? Being around the Raiders enough and being in those rooms. And I remember Dave Ziegler speaking to the media. I remember Champ Kelly speaking to the media. Like, these guys go and they'll meet with the media in the, in their press conference room and talk about the day's approach. So for him to go out there and do that, obviously, the Jason Light had a lot of confidence in him, but obviously he knew what he was talking about and was a heavy hitter and, carried a lot of weight when it came to the approach of the draft. So I just want to see what it looks like. Again, we talk about 3 to 4 meaningful contributors. That's how you look at at a successful draft, I would love to see the Raiders come out of this one with a good 3-4, and I'd like to see them consistently do that each and every year. They have not done that, but I'd like to see them get in the habit of doing that. That's how you start putting talent into the cupboards, and obviously you're not paying a premium, going out there and spending a lot of money in free agency. So the final soundbite that I want you to hear from John Spytek at the owners' meetings, again, Vinny sent me everything, right? 30 minutes of Spytek, 30 minutes of Carroll. Like, it's just so much stuff. But this one is Vinny talking to John Spytek about the running back position. Obviously, that's a question that we've talked about quite a bit here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, but he's asking about the running back position as it pertains to drafting one really high. Like basically number 6 overall, talking about Ashton Genty. But a really good question, I think, from Vinny at the GM John Spytek. Check it out.
There's a thought, or maybe it's a new thought, about where running backs should or shouldn't be drafted, how high you should draft and how high you shouldn't be drafted. Do you subscribe to that at all, or is that? I know it probably helps you make a decision, but does it make the decision for you when it comes to analytics like that?
I don't try to devalue any position that way. You know, we try to evaluate the prospect, the person, and figure out if they're a good fit in the Raiders organization. And so, if we think that any of these guys are worth a high pick, then we'll do it. And I've never felt bad about having great players at any position on the team. And how they get there, that's how they get there. The one thing I would say to that is sometimes you do have to. What I was talking about before, like, well, if it's a deep class here and a light class here, like, how do we have the best 2 or 3 picks there as opposed to just picking this guy? Like, there's an art form and an instinct to that too. But I don't know. I mean, Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley all went to different teams and changed them last year too. I don't think any of those teams were upset about the money they paid them and what they invested in them. I know the Eagles weren't.
So there's his thoughts. He doesn't devalue the player by the position. He's not worried about that. Never felt bad about having great players, right? But then at the end there, it's a little caveat that we've been talking about as well. The deep class versus the limited class, right? That does play a role. Can you get a guy in that same position a little bit later on, as opposed to, well, maybe you can't skip a guy here because there's not as many of those, right? So that's a factor that's going to play a role into the draft. And I'm not saying that it's going to play a role for the Raiders. They very easily could go get Ashton Genty and say, we don't care how deep the running back class is. This guy's such a difference maker. That's what it is. But obviously it's a part of the conversation, and it's kind of a science, as GM John Spytek kind of alluded to there while he was talking to Vinny Bonsignore. Trust and believe there's plenty more where that came from. What I'll do, instead of just going ahead and playing a whole bunch of it, I'll kind of use it to reference back. Throughout the course of the next month, we'll be able to reference back to, this is what Pete Carroll had to say at the owners' meeting. This is what John Spytek had to say at the owners' meeting about this, that, and the other, if that subject comes up. I think it's a good way to reference things. So that's what we'll do, because, again, I just can't play the whole thing. If I play the whole thing and both guys, you'll get bored just because it's so much. And, again, it's really loud as well in the setting that they're at. Also, this is something Vinny tweeted out. I'm sure if you follow Vinny Bonsignore on Twitter, you saw this. He said, just an FYI, after talking to Raiders owner Mark Davis, it doesn't look like training camp in Napa is going to happen this year. Raiders expect to be in Henderson this summer. So I know that there was a lot of conversations, even going back last year while Tom Telesco was still in place. He said they were going to have training camp somewhere else off campus, but he didn't want to do it in Costa Mesa because he wanted to have a bunch of fans there. He wanted that energy. Well, it doesn't look like they're going to have it anywhere off campus, and it's going to be back in Henderson at the facility there instead. So that's unfortunate. Was looking forward to seeing if they were going to be able to get out somewhere and, of course, bring in all the fans. And I know the fans would have been excited. In Henderson, unfortunately, the space is limited. So there's not going to be a whole bunch of fans, and it's going to be probably similar to what it was last year in Costa Mesa, where there was limited fans, and even prior years in Henderson, where there was fans out there, season ticket holders, some vendors, this, that, and the other. But it just wasn't the just open the floodgates open and let everybody come in and enjoy it like we were hoping it was going to be. So unfortunately for that. Final nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast news and notes of the day. My guy Justin Mello from the Draft Network actually sent this over to me. He said the Raiders have a top 30 visit with North Dakota State quarterback Cam Miller. It's an in-person 30 visit. That source confirmed that one. He's a 2-time FCS national champion. He's garnered a lot of intrigue through the pre-draft process after impressive showings at the Shrine Bowl and the Pro Day. I talked about on yesterday's show, Jalen Milroe going to have a top 30 visit. The Raiders, when it comes to the quarterback position and really any other position as well, they're leaving no stone unturned, which is the exact way that you're supposed to approach these things, right? All good teams, all good franchises with good GMs, good scouts, they're always looking at all these different guys from all these different, leagues, these different teams going up against the different competition levels, because there's always diamonds in the roughs. There's always players that you're not really having on your radar. All of a sudden they'll jump up and be a really good player. So you can always get a stud from somewhere. I mean, look, Josh Allen, for example, who plays for the Buffalo Bills, he was at Reedley College at one point. And all my folks in the 559 know exactly where Reedley is, community college. Then he went to Wyoming, right? And now he's a star in the NFL with a massive, massive contract with the Buffalo Bills, right? Just got paid that big-time contract extension. So you can get these quarterbacks from anywhere. You just got to get the right one to fit with your team. And I say you can get them from anywhere. It doesn't mean they're all going to be good. But if you find that good one, they could come from a North Dakota State. They could come from a Wyoming. They could come from insert school that may not be on your top 5 as far as big-time programs that are turning out NFL players each and every year. So, I just like the fact that they're having that approach, that they're visiting with as many guys as possible, getting familiar with these guys, because, again, as John Spytek, you heard him earlier in the segment, loves the draft season, loves the team-building process. It's nothing like it as far as he's concerned. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, you'll hear from my guy Adam Rank from NFL Network and NFL.com. Last year, he put together a piece called His Mock Draft with a Twist. I'll explain what that means, and we'll talk about the draft coming up this year and the piece he's putting together and who he's eyeing for the Raiders that not a lot of us are actually talking about. We'll do all that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors on the show, and that is Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending, and it's all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. They've got great insights, right? You could check out the food delivery, like how much money you spend on food delivery. Like, whoa, I didn't see this coming. How much money you spend on just entertainment, just being out and about, maybe even ride sharing, right? All in one convenient. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Even managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So right now, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL. Again, that's the promo code for half off your first year. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into a quick little couple minutes of what my guy Adam Rank from NFL Network and NFL.com had to say on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Monday. Thought it was really intriguing, and the reason is I had him on the show last year leading into the draft, and he was telling me that he was putting out a mock draft, but it was a mock draft with a twist. So what does he mean by that? Is it's not necessarily what he thinks is going to happen, but instead what what he thinks should happen, right? So he's looking at these different teams, and I know that, there's a consensus of, like, the Raiders, for example. Everyone says Ashton Genty at 6. Well, last year, I don't know who it was at 13 that everyone kind of felt like the Raiders were going to select, but he was one of the very few that when he was on my show was like, oh, yeah, I think Brock Bowers would be a good fit. But remember, we were talking about quarterbacks. At least I was talking about quarterbacks. I was like, yeah, that'd be great. He's a great talent, but who's going to throw him the ball? Well, the Raiders got Brock Bowers, and Brock Bowers had a fantastic season. It was just funny how that all came together. So I had him on my radio show on Monday, and I asked him about that piece and the way that he looks at the draft and how he's approaching this year's draft. Thought it was some really good stuff, especially the name that he brings up for the Silver and Black. Check it out.
I'm putting that piece together right now, and again, the Ashton Genty thing to me, I know a lot of people are already talking about it. Number one, I'm curious if he even gets to 6 at this point, because I think there's going to be a lot of buzz for it. I think the Giants are the Giants are just so wacky, like you never know what's going to happen. But I think for the Raiders, you can go out there and you can look at it, and Ashton Genty makes a lot of sense because you do want to get you want some firepower on offense. And Pete Carroll loves to run the football. You think about all the great years that Marshawn Lynch had with the I was going to say the Mariners. Jeez Louise. with the Seahawks. And you're like, you know what? Pete Carroll loves, and it's not even that, but look at Pete Carroll with, Lendale White, Reggie Bush, Marshawn Lynch, all these great running backs that he has been able to use, even with Kenny Walker when he was there as well. Like, okay, like this is a strong thing. And it's a deep draft for running backs. So, again, I can understand if they don't go that way. But for me, it just, I don't know. And this pains me because as a Bears fan, I would love for him to go to Chicago. But I keep thinking, like, God, this thing with the Raiders makes so much sense. And I look at it this way, too. And I'm putting this together, but, like, the one player who I love, who nobody is talking about, who nobody, like, when you look at the top 10 players, and you're like, okay, these are these guys, Mason Graham, Ty Warren. I'm pretty confident you're not going to draft Tyler Warren. But you look at all these guys who are, like, buzzworthy of the offensive linemen. Abdul Carter, I don't think gets down to 6 anyway. But I'm like, I'm looking at Will Johnson, the cornerback for Michigan.
Yep.
And I'm like, you know what, man? Like, God, that would be such a nice pick. And selfishly, looking at some of the teams that are going to be in the mix from 6 through 10, because I don't think he gets past 10, I'm like, God, there's nothing wrong with going out there. Like, cornerback, to me, is one of those positions similar to, wide receiver on the offense where you're like, hey, you know what? Like, this is an important position where I don't think that you can have enough playmakers and have enough depth. And whomever you think is on your team, you're like, well, we've got enough. I think when you have a lockdown cornerback, it changes your defense so much. And even if you have one, like, it's not going to hurt to have 2. It's not going to hurt to have 3. And I'm looking at some of these teams who are picking in the top 10, and I'm curious as to why Will Johnson's name doesn't get considered enough. And I look at Jacksonville too. I'm like, yeah, Jacksonville would be another place where this makes a lot of sense. Although I really do believe that Tyler Warren ends up in Jacksonville. That would be my suggestion. But yeah, I think it's just about I kind of take a philosophy in talking to, like, Les Snead. If you think about the Rams over the years, I truly believe the Rams are one of the better teams about just drafting great players, whether you necessarily need them or not. And I think the biggest example of that was the year that they drafted Aaron Donald at number 13. He was number 13 that year coming out of Pittsburgh. And the Rams had a defensive line that had Chris Long, and it had they had a lot of good players in it. Why can't I say Bobby Quinn? Bobber Quinn was on that defensive line too. And it's like it wasn't like the Rams needed a defensive tackle, but you're like, you know what? This player is too good to pass up. So that's a wild card for me. I think Ashton Genty makes a lot of sense there. I could see them going another wide receiver if they don't end up with if Travis falls and you don't end up trading for Tyreek Hill. But I think Will Johnson is somebody to keep an eye on. I think cornerback is being overlooked in a lot of the mocks so far, but don't write that one off just yet.
So there's Adam Rank from NFL Network, NFL.com, and you hear his rationale behind his thinking. And again, I just think it's a really good kind of strategy and a good approach. And it's a different approach, that's for sure. It's not necessarily going to always come out and be right? I mean, still, when you do these mock drafts, you probably have an average of getting, 4 or 5 right? And I think last year, the first 3 for sure, those were all chalk. We all knew Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May were going to go 1, 2, 3, right? And then you could probably get a couple others, and then it's when it went a twist, especially at number 8 with Michael Penix. But I just like the way he, has that approach. It's not necessarily what he thinks is going to happen, but what he thinks should happen. Right. And so it's interesting. He brings up Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, which is funny because anyone who's been listening to the show and listening to me for a while knows I always say DBs win games. Right. I'm always pounding the table for a DB. And this year I went away from it. I didn't even bring up, Will Johnson. And I know we've talked about him a couple times. We have a couple people call in and text in about him. And I know he's a fantastic player out of Michigan. I just never thought that he was going to be not even play at 6. I didn't think that he was a reasonable option at number 6. But it's funny because when we did the Locked On NFL mock draft that we talked about last week, he was available. Matter of fact, he was available in the top 15. He didn't end up going off the board till number 16 overall to the Cardinals. Now, don't tell anybody that I told you that because the show hasn't come out yet. But, yeah, he ends up going number 16 overall. We know that, Will Johnson has the Michigan ties. John Spytek, Tom Brady, they both do as well. We know Pete Carroll is a head coach that coaches DBs, coaches defense, right? Play the defensive back position. That very well could be the direction that they go at number 6 overall. I mean, I think Ja'Cory Bennett, you have to feel pretty good about the chance he has to hold down one side of the field at that cornerback position. But there's no telling that Jack Jones is going to be the guy. There's no telling that Eric Stokes is going to be the guy. There's no telling that any of these guys that are there. So maybe a guy like Will Johnson does make the most sense, and we're not really even talking about him. We're talking about Genty. We're talking about Mimbu. We're talking about Mason Graham. I mean, we have brought up Travis Hunter, but that's just because he's so electric, right? And then, Adam Rank is even, it's funny, when we talked on the show as well, he talked about, Tyreek Hill. I don't know if you saw his social media post where he basically said peace. He's like quitting on the Dolphins all the time, basically saying, trade me. Okay, don't trade me. Trade me, don't trade me. And so he said, maybe the Raiders should trade for Tyreek Hill, right? If anyone could get the most out of him and kind of keep him at bay, it would be Pete Carroll. So he was giving Pete Carroll a ton of credit. Like the conversation, I could have put the whole conversation on the show. It would have been about 15 or 16 minutes. But, man, he was giving a lot of praise to Pete Carroll and thought that he could do some really good things. So you heard what he said about, Travis and maybe another wide receiver, or maybe you go trade for Tyreek Hill. That's what he was referencing right there, was that Tyreek Hill tweet where he's always asking to be traded from Miami. That dude, he's something. It's every year and it's every few months he's asking for a trade. But that's a whole nother scenario. But Will Johnson, again, I could have selected him at number 6 in the draft. I didn't, but that's an interesting thought right there. And again, he's one of the few that talked about Brock Bowers as a possibility for the Raiders last year at 13. So I'm interested to see how it all plays out. But give me your thoughts. What do you think? Right? I mean, again, I didn't select Will Johnson. I don't know how many of you would have wanted me to select Will Johnson, but what are your thoughts if the Raiders were to come away from the draft with Will Johnson at number 6, or maybe they even trade back a little bit, as some of you have suggested? Trade back, collect a couple other picks, and then get a guy like Will Johnson. If they walk away, I should say, with Will Johnson with their first pick, their round 1 pick in this draft, whether it's at 6 or 16 or 12 or whatever the case may be, how comfortable would you feel? How good would you feel about that selection? 707-654-4693. Trust and believe. We've got plenty of calls and texts. We'll get to them coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast as we close out the show. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's FanDuel. March Madness is here, but it's almost gone, right? I mean, we're down to the Final Four in San Antonio. FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. Not that there's any of those, but, whoever's cutting down the nets, it's all there. You could pick the favorites. The favorites on the brackets would have basically got you home. Would have been a really good bracket, right? All ones making the Final Four. It's only happened twice in the history of March Madness. So there you go. And it hasn't happened in a really long time, right? You could do the spreads, totals, game props, whatever the case may be. They've got it for you. The one-stop shop right there at FanDuel.com. The app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on all the hoop action all tournament long. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts are after that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with ABA Ivan Davis. He's calling to talk about the 7-round mock draft that he put together. Here he is, ABA Ivan Davis.
Hey, what's up, Q? This is ABA Ivan Davis. I did my own mock draft. It's a simulator, and I want to get your opinion on what you think of some of these picks. It's a 7-round draft. At number 6, I took Travis Hunter. Unbelievable that he dropped that far. That's not going to happen in real life. But I said, okay, I was going to take Shedeur Sanders, who was also there. So I took Travis Hunter. The 37th pick, I took Jackson Dart. The 68th pick, I took Caleb Johnson, running back. 115th pick, I took Torrey Holton, wide receiver. 143rd pick, Charles Grant, offensive tackle. 152nd pick, Noah Williams of Cal, cornerback. Then next I took another running back, Kyle Monagle from Rutgers. 213th pick, I took a defensive tackle. I was going best available at this point, Cam Jackson. And the 222nd pick, Tonka Hemingway from South Carolina. Anyway, give me your opinion on what you think, Q. Hopefully this makes the call. Go Raiders.
There you go. Travis Hunter, cornerback, wide receiver. Jackson Dart, quarterback. Caleb Johnson, running back, wide receiver, offensive tackle, cornerback, running back, defensive tackle, defensive tackle. That was a lot of good positions that you attacked right there. The top 3 picks, I think, all look really solid, right? Hunter, Dart, Caleb Johnson, all really solid. I don't feel like, the top 2 will be there. But again, just because I don't feel like that doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, Hunter at 6, Dart in round 2 at number 37 overall. It's a long shot, but you never really know. What I can say is that you basically addressed all the Raiders' needs, so that's job well done. Now, did you get the right players is always going to be the big question, and I'm glad you did the 7-round mock draft. I still didn't get around to doing it yet. I'll definitely go ahead and put that in the hopper and make sure I do it, but we'll get that done before the week's over. That's for sure. Thanks so much for the call, ABA Ivan Davis. I appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Daniel in Vegas. Says, hey, Q. Daniel from Vegas, big fan of the show. I listen to it every morning on my way to work. As for the Locked On mock draft, I'm all in on Genty for a number of reasons. First, we need a real running back bad. Ever since Jacobs left, we've been feeling it. Genty isn't just the best running back in the draft, but he's like the 4th best player in the draft, period. And to add to that, he's a true leader, something that Pete and Spytek said they're looking for in a player. Dude is super humble. He's not a diva. He's faithful to his team. And one last thing, Pete mentioned in his presser that we need to fill the stadium with our fans, and that he's going to work on doing that. Sure, Membu will be a great player, but will his name be enough to make fans want to come and watch him? I know Genty will help bring in fans just like Shador's name would. Either way, excited to see your pick and excited to see the Raiders pick. Feeling really good about this season. Thanks for all the hard work you put in making the show. Raiders. That's Daniel in Vegas. Thanks for the text. I appreciate you. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Membu, the offensive tackle, probably not even Graham, at least early on, the defensive tackle. They're not going to sell jerseys early on. Membu's not going to sell any jerseys. Graham will, but maybe not right away. But Genty would definitely put butts in the seats. And that's something that Allegiant Stadium, that's a fact. I'll give you that 100%. That's a fact that needs to happen. They need to have someone that's not just Max Crosby, because everyone has a Max Crosby jersey, but someone else that can, put some butts in the seat and get some folks excited. They need that difference maker offensively. Brock Bowers obviously is a big time player, but they need someone else as well. So yeah, Genty would definitely do that as opposed to the other guys. So you're on to something. He is super humble. He's not a diva. He's absolutely 100% faithful to his team. He had a chance to go to many different places, take some NIL money, hit the transfer portal, and he stayed right there at Boise State. He could have been playing anywhere, but he stayed with Boise State. So yeah, there's a lot of that leadership, everything. Dude's a great dude. So I don't go against you. I don't disagree with anything that you said there at all. And he would be a great addition to the team. There's no doubt about that. So thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Jacob in Wilmington, North Carolina. He's calling to talk about a potential guest for the show that would be all NFL draft related, and he'd be there for. Jacob in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Hey, Q. Hey, Ari. This is Jacob from Wilmington, North Carolina. Fellas, appreciate what you do. Anyways, got done listening to Friday's show. You had Mike Tannenbaum on, and I got this idea. Now, I don't know, you might be apprehensive to this idea. And Raider Nation, this might cut a little bit, but Q, can you get Mike Mayock on? I mean, he's still my guy. I like him. If you even got Dave Ziegler on, I'd be cool with that too. If you ask me, I like the Tyree Wilson draft, and I know Mike Mayock missed on a bunch of draft picks, but he still drafted Max Crosby. So, those are 2 former GMs, and I know Mike Mayock is on, radio shows and doing, the whole media thing, and you're, an ESPN guy, and you probably got a source or something. But I could understand the apprehensiveness, but I would love to know what Mike Mayock is thinking. It's just a personal thing. If you can make it happen, that'd be awesome. Anyways, later.
Thanks for the call. I appreciate you, my man, and I would definitely love to have Mike Mayock on. Great guy. I can look into it, right? I mean, he's a guy that I've had some, communication with back and forth. It hasn't been in a long time since he's been here in Vegas, but, obviously know some folks that know him, and I can reach out and see what happens. The worst he can say is no. You're guaranteed to miss a shot that you don't take. You know how that goes. As far as Dave Ziegler goes, he works for the Titans now, so that's not going to happen. But Mayock is definitely a possibility. So I'll reach out. I think that'd be really cool just because, before he was ever the GM of the Raiders, he was always the go-to guy on NFL Network that everyone was paying attention to see what he said. So thanks so much for that call and suggestion. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from 60s era Raiders fan. He said, Q, I'm here in the 603 for the first time in many years. I'm actually optimistic. I agree with you that an 8-9 2025 is a reasonable expectation. Pete Carroll's optimism is both real and contagious. I don't even play for him. Keep doing what you do. Have a great one. Locked On Raiders podcast. That's from 60s era Raiders fan. And hearing Pete Carroll talk and his energy and his excitement and his want to, and the fact that he brought stability to the organization, I think all of that is really good. I just don't want to ever set anyone up and be like, man, this season they're going to get double-digit wins. There's no doubt. Like I thought last year the Raiders were going to get a lot more wins based off what they did at the end of 2023. But come to find out, once it's all reset and it's all your baby to have to put together, it ain't as easy as it is being, the interim coach. And obviously Antonio Pierce found out about that. So I don't want to, sit there and say, man, double-digit wins and playoffs, no doubt about it. But I think, again, similar to what you saw from Sean Payton in year one in Denver, I think that's reasonable. Anything else would be fantastic. I would be here for it and do a backflip if they did double-digit wins. But don't hold me to that because I can't do a backflip. I'll end up busting my head, and we don't want to do that. So thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a quick call from Fred from Bakersfield. He's calling to ask a draft question, but not a question about the names everyone is talking about. Here's Fred from Bakersfield.
Hey, what up, Q? It's your boy, Fred, calling in from Bakersfield, California. I got a question, man. I don't think anybody's really asking. We're all focused in on the first couple rounds. Where are or who is the sleepers in the draft, like a Max Crosby in the fourth round? Like, what players do you see that could be that next player in the fifth, sixth, and the seventh round that nobody's really talking about other than the main people, Genty, and then the offensive linemen? All right, boss. I'll holler. No.
Big Fred, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, my man. And, yeah, there's a few names, at the top of my head, but the beautiful thing about the draft, and you brought up Max Crosby, it's so funny. Like, I didn't know Max Crosby's name until a week before the draft. I actually had a guy, Bill Jones from CBS Sports in Dallas, and he's a big Texas high school football guy as well. And I remember him being a guest on my radio show on ESPN Central Texas, and we were asking him about just what you said, sleeper guys. And he said, you know what? I don't know if this guy's a sleeper or not. I just know that he's really good and was really good at Texas high school football. He didn't get any offers outside of Eastern Michigan. He's pretty lanky, tall dude. He's got a motor that doesn't quit. We'll see what teams think about him, but his name is Max Crosby. And I never thought about him twice until the Raiders drafted him. So it's so funny how that happens. But, there's a couple guys out there. Alfred Collins, I would say, the defensive tackle out of Texas. He's probably a second-round guy. That's not necessarily, a super sleeper like a fourth or fifth-round guy. But I don't think he's being talked about enough. Offensive tackle Charles Grant from William & Mary. That's another guy that, folks are starting to really get a buzz about. He's probably a second or third-round pick. Jacob Parrish, the cornerback from Kansas, day 2 or day 3 guy. Malachi Moore, anyone who's listened to the show knows I'm an Alabama guy. He's a late-round pick, safety from Bama. He could play. And then 2 UNLV guys, and we've talked about them on the show, Ricky White III and also Jackson Woodard, the linebacker. They were both part of Barry Odom's staff, and I think that those guys are a couple guys that could be had, and they could play at a high level as well, later-round picks. But we'll start to learn more as this month rolls on and we get closer and closer and closer to the end of the month, round 1 there in Green Bay. So Fred, thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Got a text from Mr. Crisp. We'll get that tomorrow. Call from Georgia Raider. A text from DJ Raider in Arizona. And good friend Raider Eddie in Denver give us a call as well. So we'll get that plus more. I'll try to knock out that 7-round mock draft by way of PFF. We'll do that. It's not that hard. I just got to go and do it. I just didn't get it done today, but we have plenty to talk about anyway. We'll see what other news and notes maybe comes out of the owners' meetings, if the Raiders make any other moves official like they made with Devin White on Monday. And, of course, we'll be back here talking about it on tomorrow. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.